What's up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World 7 underscore D. I'm back when the world was black. The Untold History of the World's First Civilization. This is the Volume 2 book. Volume 1. Excuse me, Volume 1. I'll say Volume 2. I want to go back into Homer and one thing. Alright? And this is something that we're going to have to really study and know. And really get to grips, because I constantly hear people say, well, Mongoloids came here, okay? What does Mongoloid mean? Mongoloid is one of the three essential identity types or races that anthropologists use to classify present-day people and historical remains based on anthropometric traits. At one point, there were 5 or more such classifications, including Negroid, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Australoid, and others, many of which were used to further subdivide black classifications, such as Negroid or Negroitoid, Capoid, and Khoisan-oid, etc. Since then, anthropologists trimmed these distinctions down to the first 3: Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid. None of them sound pleasant. In fact, Mongoloid is offensive anywhere outside of an anthropological context, because its early use derived from calling people Mongols because they had features that white people associated with Down syndrome, known as Mongolism. But, as we explained, the origin of the Mongoloid complex of features begin with Australoid people. In other words, the East Asian look is just one of the major variations of the features found among the original black people of Asia. But it seems like a stretch, doesn't it, to say that Chinese or Korean people come from black roots. It seems counterintuitive because the features are so different. The problem is that we associate Mongoloid with a very stereotypical or extreme set of features, ignoring the fact that all Mongoloid people do not look alike, despite what the unformed may think. Anthropologists generally agree that typical Mongoloid traits include synodonty, or shovel-shaped incisor teeth, an epicantic fold, the way East Asian eyelids tend to be shaped, coarse straight hair, and light, often yellowish skin. But do all East Asians have these traits? 2 types of Mongoloid. As early as 1900, Joseph Denneker recognized that there was a sharp division amongst Mongoloid people, noting the strong differences between different populations. He said the Mongol race admits 2 varieties or subraces: Tungese, or Northern Mongolian, and Southern Mongolian. Northern Mongolian will include the indigenous people of Siberia, the Manchu of China, and others who have the typical Mongoloid look. The southern group looked, well, a little more like black people. Their skin was darker, their lips fuller, their jaws stuck out more, known as pragmatism. Their noses broader, their heads longer, their hair coarser, and their eyes lacked the familiar feature. But why? Was the southern group simply a more mixed group of Mongoloid people, or were the representatives of the original Mongoloid population? The evidence suggests later. Akazawa Takuru, professor of anthropology at the International Research Center for Japanese Studies in Kyoto, also spits the population in two. Neo-Mongoloid and New Mongoloids have extreme Mongoloid, cold adapted features. Examples include the Chinese, the Burats, the Eskimos, and the Chuchai of Siberia. On the other hand, the Paleo-Mongoloids are less Mongoloid because they are less cold adapted. Examples include the Burmese, the Filipinos, the Polynesians, the Jomon, and the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Okay. Paleoanthropologist Peter Brown of the University of New England has concluded that the Mongoloid look doesn't show up in China until 5,500 to 7,000 years ago. The light complexion of many East Asians may not have come until thousands of years later, when the foreign Zhou conquered the Black Shang dynasty. Roland B. Dixon, his 1923 Racial History of Man, says that the preeminence of flat nose and long-headed factors among otherwise Mongoloid populations suggests the remnants of an earlier Proto-Australoid and Proto-Negroid type. For example, the skulls of Tibeto-Burman speaking Shan people were, in the earliest period, had different features. Let's see, I'm going to go further down. To be fair, some of these traits may have come directly from black ancestors without any regional evolution. For example, some typical Mongoloid features can be found in the diversity of Africa's oldest people. And Before Dawn, Nicholas Wade notes that the Khoisan of Africa look similar to Asian populations, that both lineages may have inherited these features from ancestral human populations. He goes and talking about many Khoisan speakers have yellow skin. The epicanthic fold above the eyes that gives some Asian eyes their characteristic shape, shovel shape and scissors. Front teeth hollow out on the tongue side of the mouth, found commonly in Asians and so-called Native Americans and Mongoloid spots. A bluish mark on the lower back of the young infants. The Kaung San themselves apparently recognize this similarity, since they assign Asians to the category of real people like themselves. As distinct from Lum, the category of non-San Africans and Europeans. He goes on to have here the evolution of Mongoloid features. However, it is more likely that the bulk of Mongoloid morphology came about after the long-term resettlement of Australoid people. That is, the Mongoloid people are simply descendants of Australoid people who are much more cold adapted because of generations of settlement in colder, wind-swept climates. The more these features adapted to this environment, the more Mongoloid and less Australoid their features. This is why many Proto-Mongoloid people, particularly people who didn't stay in this climate as long, retain black features. Yeah, I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to read all that, the rest of it, about the so-called Mongoloid. I think you get the drift of what I'm saying. And then I'm going to go to my encyclopedia. This is an old encyclopedia. And this is the encyclopedia that I showed you before. Webster New Dictionary of the American Language Student Handbook from 1977. All right. Originally it's 1974. All right, 1974, 77 actually. Okay, but I have two of these, but the front cover is missing in this one. Other one, somewhere in the house. But I want to go to 45. All right, 45. 45. Here you have. I can see it. You can get it clearly. Real close. Shit out there. You have the mongrel, an animal or plant produced by crossing breeds or varieties. A dog of this kind. Anything produced by indiscriminate mixture of mixed breed, race, origin, or character, often a derogatory usage. I'm going to go up. Okay. I'm going to go up. I gotta get Mongol. All right, we're gonna go to Mongolian. A native of Mongolia, same as Mongol. All right, Mongoloid, of or characteristic of the natives of Mongolia, designated or of one of the major groups of mankind. It includes most of the peoples of Asia, the Eskimo, the North American Indians, etc. It's the third of having Down syndrome. All right, a member of a so-called Mongoloid group, a person for having Down syndrome. Mongoloid, mongrel. So basically, just talking about a mixed breed, man. I said in other videos, that's the definition, dictionary definition. I said in my other videos, and I think I mentioned when I was at the track that I can remember as a kid looking at documentaries of the Ku Klux Klan back from the 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s, and how they talking about how they don't want the races get together to produce some mongrel. That means to produce a Barack Obama. That was basically what they were saying. Don't produce a mongrel. And the term Mongolian is very racist, but that was they used to talk about someone that had Down syndrome. That show that was out in the late 80s, early 90s called Life Goes On, with that dude named Corky on there. I think he suffered from Down syndrome. That was the so-called Mongol features. But when you look at those features, you see in those San people or Khoisan people in Southern Africa. Even you see it somewhat in Mandela had it, and his wife Winnie had somewhat of those features, the cheekbones and everything. So those features originated with darker skinned people. That's when I said the so-called original so-called Mongolian people with those features were Negroid people. And even if you did have Mongoloid featured people over here in ancient America, they were still a Negroid people. I just read you when the author talks about how they originally were darker skinned people. And there's certain so-called black people who have a yellowish skin, but was constant mixing with other groups, they started to they maintained certain features, but they lost their skin, their darker skin complexion. Excuse me. They lost the darker skin complexion. Also, being in a certain climate too, but they lost their darker skin complexion. This mixing was going on because there's still darker skinned black people in remote areas in these countries today, especially in southern countries like let's say the Philippines, you know, uh, Vietnam. They still the darker skinned Negroes there. They like in the areas of what you call the forests or the woodlands area, but they're still there to this very day. So our people need to get out of this mess talking about how Mongoloid people, Mongol people, was a group that came in. Because I hear a lot of these Pan-Africans say this. Well, the Mongol people came in first, not a quote so-called African. Number one, the so-called black people were the original so-called, if you want to use the term Negroid, and so-called Mongoloid. I often say there's very different types of black people that were here in ancient America that had different features. They had different type of physical features and hair textures. We weren't just one type of people who looked one type of way. So when you hear this mess by these clown Pan-Africans, man, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like I said, I study this. I have this student handbook dictionary, and this was handed down to me from my father. I have two copies of this one. Has the, like I said, the torn front cover. But we gonna have to understand is that so-called black people are the Aboriginal people of this land, of all over the world. And I wanted to talk about this in my video earlier, but I kind of lost time. But I really want brothers and sisters to really get serious about the research. I could have read more, and I wasn't going to read more because it goes on to continue to talk about the so-called Mongoloid people, but then it goes into Asia in this book. This is a pretty good book, man. Some things I disagree with because I'm not in no Pan-African stuff, but it's a good book to have and to read and to understand that the original people of this planet were black people, and people know this, man. But unfortunately, many of us don't know this ourselves. All right, many of us do not know this ourselves because we refuse to study this information. And it's more stuff, like I said, could have read, but I didn't want to continue to read this. I just want to get to a particular point that I want to emphasize is that this is our history. I can read this little small part right here. And this is something that brothers and sisters need to pick up on. I'm going to read this little part right here. Let me get a clear image. I can get it real clear. Okay. There's no other plausible theory to explain why Mongoloid people who travel by land from Siberia across Beringa and then into North America were accompanied by a coastal migration of Australoid people who sailed from Japan along Beringa's southern shores to northwest Canada, where they settled as the Hadia and ultimately to the western shores of Baja, California, nor why the Polynesians was followed by a migration of black seafarers all the way into the Americas. Why would two groups of people seem to walk hand in hand, yet remain distinct culturally and genetically? Okay, the original Polynesians were so-called Negroes, but in any case, even the ancestors of the Mongoloid people were somehow exiled from a prehistoric black settlement in the distinct past. This would be just one of the many periods where our ancestors had developed historical rifts, only to reunite at some point in the future. In fact, as he goes on, the earliest rifts go back to Rift Valley, where the first humans. Well, okay, he goes on it, but I'm not gonna go and read that part. But the main thing I was gonna read about how the so-called those features were originally Negroid, right? And I'm going to show you the picture that I wanted to show earlier, and I've shown it before in my other videos. This is the first king of the unified Hawaii Islands. That's King Kamehameha. That's obviously Negro. All right, that's a Negro. He does not look like the people who run around there today because they are what you call mulattoes. This is original Hawaiian. Now, this is why these people have suppressed so much information and have stolen our history. I've read many anthropological books. I have so many anthropological books that they'll actually have some of the real images, then they'll show you fake images. But this is the true people of this land. So when you hear these Negroes, you try to explain these Negroes, trying to say all black folks didn't come from those slave ships. We didn't. Most of us were already in these lands. We were already here. I know it's hard for some people to comprehend, to even believe or fathom this, but we were already here. And this is why I emphasize you got to do your research. And I spend tons of money on this stuff, man, but you got to do your research. You can't just sit there and believe what the mainstream historians of media would tell you. You have to dig and do your due diligence to really seek and study this information. I read you out of this book. You don't want to go by the book. Then I read you through the dictionary from the 1970s. Because at this time, Carter was president when this dictionary was published. Because again, Carter is the last president in this particular dictionary as the most recent president. Jimmy Carter was the most recent president. So this is an old dictionary, but it talks about, it gave you the dictionary, the definition of the Mongoloid, mongrel. So I want you to understand that. This is why I do what I do. Like I said, I've studied this stuff, and I know that majority of us are not descending no African slaves. The numbers don't add up. Even in Brazil, there were more slaves brought. There were slaves brought there. Some Africans brought there, but there were Aboriginal blacks who were already there. The number of the Negroes there do not add up to the number of so-called slaves they brought there. So we got to start using common sense. The numbers don't add up, man. They don't add up. And you have to understand that not all black people come from Africa. You had your black nobility in Europe. You had your black empires in Asia. These bastards know about that the original people who ran the world were black people. It was a belt of black people globally. So-called black people, melanated people, original people, people of the sun. That's people of melanated skin, darker skin, ruled the damn planet. So to relegate anyone who's so-called black and say they're West African is insulting. So all these black people around the world are just West African. That doesn't add up, man. It really does not add up. You do your research, it doesn't add up. But see, some of our people fear from gasping or trying to hear the truth. They want to continue to be in that bubble because they've been trained to think a certain way, and many of them do not want to upset their little white liberal friends who are racist as hell. So like I said in my other videos, stop listening to these Pan-Africans. Stop listening to these Negro mainstream historians. Don't listen to the boule. They've done enough damage as is. They're telling you that you're descendant of African slaves. These people are telling you that, but not. I showed you these last two videos, man, and the other videos. Images of black people who are aboriginal to this land globally. Not only this land, but globally. And the information's there. There's no excuse, man. Anyone who's still pushing that mess is just about Africa this, Africa that, and not looking at melanated people from a global perspective, man, is an uninformed idiot. Yeah, I'm saying this now. And there's too many of them pushing that on YouTube. Just want to make us, quote, African and not look at us from a global perspective as of people who look like us globally. And just want to say that people who look like us came out of a small pocket of Africa, south of the Sahara. Really? You can't be that naive to believe that. There's too much information. And these anthropologists know this. But you don't know it like this book that I read talked about. You don't know it. Because you sit there and believe what you've been taught in school. But in school you're indoctrinated with a lie. The original people of this planet were melanated, negritic people. And I hate using terms, those are racist, anthropological terms. But the original people were so-called Negroid people all over this planet. So a pale-faced Mongoloid cannot be the original people of the Americas at the date that they're saying, because that pale-faced person did not exist at that time. You have to understand that. Stop thinking that you're just a slave from Africa. Stop that. That is wrong information. Stop thinking that your last names come from white people. That is a lie. It does not come from white people. These names originate from black people. The guy lives on a farm. He's a farmer. He lives in the marshlands. He's marshman. He live in the woods. Jonathan Woods. He's a woodsmith. Or woodsman. Last name of Woodsman. Because that's what he does. These names were originally of so-called black people. I showed you the J.A. Rogers book. Shows you these surnames. And the people of the coat of arms who ruled Europe, who ruled the British Isles. These were Negroes. Those were Negroes. You got to stop this mess thinking that you was a slave. White folks originate in Central Asia. They do not originate in Asia. They do not originate in Europe, Africa, hell, even Asia. All those areas were black people, so-called black people, melanated people. Other people came along differently. As you go back further in time, the people were darker skinned people. Originally were black people. Then, like I said, people who really study this know this. People who don't continue to tell you that you're a descendant of African slaves. Do not listen to them, man. And I beg of you, do not listen to them Negroes, man. Do not listen to the Jabaris, the Amara Squad, Sarnetta, that Dr. Ma'at chick. Do not listen to them, man. They don't know what the hell they talking about. Do not listen to these boule Negroes, even on YouTube. They don't know what the hell they talking about, man. Our history on these American shores go back thousands of years, man. Thousands of years. And this is the hidden secret of the great melanated black empires here in America. That is a very secret that's been suppressed, man. Because these bastards don't want you to know that. Because you really knew that, you really know what you can do and who you really are. And they cannot control your mind. Because right now they control our mind, thinking that we come from slaves from Africa, some Kunta Kinte nonsense. Some Goree Island nonsense. Some so-called Africa town in Alabama nonsense. If you study Alabama and know who Tuscaloosa was a black Indian chief, man. Tuscaloosa's near Birmingham, Alabama. That was a black Indian chief, man. These people are lying. They've been continuing to lie. Get your culture back. Learn your true history. The people who were prisoners of war, quote, were in enslavement were Negroes. And you get these Negroes talking about, oh, the 5 civilized tribes on black slaves. All those so-called tribes were originally Aboriginal black tribes, man. Period. All those so-called tribes were Negroid tribes. Period. I did the name thing when I talk about the Key, Cherokee, Shawnee. These names sound similar because they're the same Negroes, but then the identity's been hijacked and we were reclassified as Africans or, quote, coloreds, Negroes. We're not Africans, man. We are the Aboriginal people of this land. So when you talk about reparations, by stating that you're an Aboriginal black of this land and that your land was stolen and your identity was stolen and you reclassified and you are the true original people of this land, not an immigrant or descendant of immigrants who were brought over here, forcefully brought over here, you have more power in the knowledge and the fact that you are the Aboriginal person here. But some of our people are so limited with their research and their information. The information is right there. It's right near you, man. The information is in your face. It's right near you. When you walk by all these goddamn mounds, man, they're built by your ancestors. Your ancestors ain't come on no chains from no goddamn boat. Your ancestors built the freaking mounds and the pyramid structures throughout the Americas. This is your history. not a person who are mestizo. That's mixture. That's mixed breed. I just brought that up. The Aboriginal people, the dark-skinned people, and I showed you people with the so-called Mongoloid features who are darker skinned. Because that's how they originally look like. When you see that Angela Bassett, she sort of has some of them features. Or she West African. No. She has those damn features. There's other black people who have those sort of features. We vary here in the U.S. Our features, our height, our skin tones, and our hair texture. It always varied. Besides some having some tampering from paler skinned people. And some of the people don't want to come to grips with this because you have been so conditioned of thinking black people come in one type. I talked about before how these race anthropologists would come up to 7 different races in Africa. And all these damn so-called 7 different races were of the same race. They're all black people. They had one of them was the true Negro. So the other 6 out of 7 different races weren't truly black. It's just this true Negro with a big, wide face, certain cheekbones, and a wide nose and full lips. God damn it, man. You gotta wake up what these people are doing. These people have created these different classifications to even separate various different black groups. This is a diabolical, devious, disgusting ploy that's been done to our people. And many of you are still going along with that because you want to still believe in the story that you was an African slave. That's utter nonsense, man. That's insulting. Learn your true history. Learn your true history. Learn your true history. Peace and love, brothers and sisters.